Are you ready to start? Hey guys, and welcome to another video where we talk technique tips in terms of painting. Now she's gone. My cat Mia is here with me today. So today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about value in painting. What is it? Why is it important? And how can you actually go about implementing this into your paintings? So first of all, what you need to know about value is it's one of the elements of art, okay? There are actually 7 elements of art, including line, shape, form, a lot of different things, but value is one of them. And value, this is why I'm doing a whole video just about value, because it's kind of the trickiest one, I think, to grasp. Aside from value, color is another one of the key elements of art. And we do talk a lot about that in color theory, if you remember, or if you have not yet taken, make sure you check out my free color theory workshop video where we workshop all the things about color theory and I take you all the way through what color theory is, how we mix colors, all of that sort of thing. But again, today we are going to focus on value. So what is value and how do we actually use it? And I'm going to bring you over to my laptop here. So here we have, I actually did a blog post on what is value in painting and why does it matter not that long ago. We're not going to go through the whole post, but this is just to help you get the general gist of what value is. And then after that, I'm going to take you through a couple of photos, some paintings that I've actually done based on photos, and another painting class that I've taught online so that we can actually see making values in action, okay? So what value is, and this is just kind of how, there's a lot of different definitions out there. This is the definition that I like and that I kind of came up the easiest to understand. Value is the perceived lightness or darkness of color on the page or the canvas or the wood or whatever you're painting on, right? And this doesn't just apply to painting. We're talking in terms of painting today because I'm a painter and we're just talking in terms of painting today, but you can also do you can see different values in drawing, other art forms, okay? But I think it does affect us the most as painters because with value, in terms of our paintings, value is all about these highlights and lowlights that we see in the pictures that we actually paint, okay? So that's just kind of what it is. In the simplest terms, you guys, highlights and lowlights. We all know what highlights and lowlights are. If you've ever been to the salon, ever had your hair colored, can't relate, natural hair only, but you know, sometimes you go in to get highlights in your hair or lowlights in your hair or a mixture of both. It's the exact same thing with paintings, all right? Exact same thing with paintings here. So let's take a look at if this painting looks a little bit familiar. It's because it's kind of the one right above my head right now. But here's, you know, a better screenshot of it on the screen so you can see it here in its full glory. I really like this painting. But let's just take a look, just as we're getting started here, understanding these highlights and lowlights, let's take a look at this picture here and see if we can pick out where there are highlights and lowlights, the perceived lightness, the perceived areas that we see of lightness, and the perceived areas we see of darkness. And if you want to even like pause the video now and kind of just take a few seconds, you guys, to look at this picture and kind of see if you can see those areas of light and dark on your own, and then unpause and listen to me here in a second as I tell you where I actually intentionally put those areas of the different highlights and lowlights here. So I can tell you, because I'm the artist that painted this, that I intentionally did add highlights and lowlights here. I actually based this painting on a real photograph. I think that's another thing, and we're going to get to that next. But painting based on real photographs, if you want your artwork to look really realistic, which is the way I like to paint. I know not everybody likes to paint that way, but if that's the way you want to go about with your paintings, then basing your paintings on photos, at least to start, especially as a beginner, as you're looking at photos and painting based on those photos, you can actually see in the photos, and like I said, we're going to go over this in just a second, you can actually see in those photos the areas of lightness and darkness in the actual photograph, so that then you can translate that over to your painting as you're trying to recreate the picture you see in paint, right? So again, here in this painting here, I see my highlights and my lowlights. And I'm going to tell you where I intentionally put the highlights based on the photograph I was working with. The main highlights here that I can see I did is the white areas, you can kind of see with my cursor here, in the actual petals, like here on the tops of the petals, somewhere over here on these tops of these petals, over here. Hello. Okay, yes. And some other areas of highlights here, like in the stem, with that really, really light green, especially in the leaves, and back here, like the stem that comes off of the leaves of the plant behind it, behind the flower. There's a lot of light green areas, and those are intentional highlights. You can even see here, I don't remember what these things are called. They're not stems, but whatever these things here that are like on the end have areas of lightness on them as well, because they're kind of brown, right? But there's some areas of light, kind of like a whitish, lightish brown, that are intentionally placed in there, right? Because it's all the highlights, the light. That's another thing with value, you guys. It's where the light is naturally hitting the parts of this flower and whatever's in the background, okay? As for the lowlights in this picture, I think the most obvious lowlight is the background itself. The photograph I was working off of specifically, and I actually do know who photographed this picture. It's my dad's cousin did the photography here and took a picture of this photo. Took a picture of this flower with the photo of the flower. So I know that he did do something to take, I'm not a photographer myself, but he did do something to make the background look or appear black as he was taking the picture. Something to do with the exposure, I don't know. I'm a painter, not a photographer here, that's for sure. So I think the most obvious low light would be just the whole background here, right? And you may see that there's some areas where it looks lighter in the background, but it's actually not. And we can even see in the version, well, the actual painting I have here above my head, that those are not actual highlights of the painting itself. Those were just highlights from the light when I was taking the picture of this painting. It's a picture, it's a painting of a photo, and it's a photo of a painting. So those highlights there that you kind of see is just kind of like from the flash of the light that I was shining on the actual painting to take a picture of it. So the whole background is actually just pure plain black. It's just a full-on low light in itself. There's no highlights in it intentionally that I was meaning to put there. However, there are some intentional low lights here on the petals of the plant, or parts of this plant that the flower came off of here in the background. You can see like there's like a dark shadow right here underneath this petal, right? There's some dark shadows over here on this leaf. There's some dark right here on this stem right here. There's a highlight on this side that we talked about, but there's also a low light on the other side. Up here on this one, I think that there's a little bit of a low light here on this side of this leaf, okay? And then on the actual flower itself, we've got some streaks of this like dark, I'm pretty sure I used burnt umber there, but it's kind of like a reddish brown tone. And then of course there's dots on the flower itself, which is just the way the flower naturally is, right? It just naturally has those dark dots on there. So they're not, that one's not a low light from the light hitting in a certain area of the painting, you know? Like in these leaves here and in the stem, we can tell that the light is hitting it here and it's leaving a highlight here and casting a low light of a shadow behind it. In the flower, the low lights, you can consider these dots that are on, the natural dots on the petals here, to be low lights because they are darker perceived darkness on the page. Even though it's not a low light or a shadow cast by the sun or like the light or whatever was hitting this flower at the time, right? Some other low lights that I can tell and I can see in this flower here is on, again, these like round coffee bean looking things on the top. We can see some low lights and streaks in those as well, that those would have been also from the way the light was hitting it, probably coming from this direction, it seems. The light was kind of coming from the left hand side of the page, hitting it there, and then casting a shadow on the right side of each of these bean looking objects on the flower. And of course, there might be more highlights and lowlights in this picture that you might have caught on to, but I just didn't. Of course, I did paint this a little while ago, so I don't remember exactly all the highlights and lowlights in the picture as I was painting it. And also, you guys, we're talking about value now because it is a really important part of your paintings and stuff, especially as a beginner. But with time, this is going to become something that's going to be like, you're not even going to think about it when you go to make a painting. You're not even going to think, okay, I need to analyze this photo and see all the highlights and lowlights, and I need to prepare this before I start painting on the page. That is something that I recommend, you know, as a beginner. But over time, it's going to just be ingrained in your system as an artist, and you're not going to think twice about these highlights and lowlights, right? Because I look at this and I'm like, I can definitely tell you where the highlights and lowlights that I see right now looking at it is, but I don't remember. You know, I obviously don't remember when I was painting because it's been like a couple years now, but I can also tell you that I wasn't super hyper focused on those highlights and lowlights while I was painting it. I probably thought about it either subconsciously or consciously as I was painting it, but I wasn't super hyper focused like, oh my gosh, I gotta get those highlights in there, I gotta get those lowlights in there. Just enjoying the painting process, right? And thinking about highlights and lowlights, it might be really overwhelming in the beginning, but with time, you guys, it's gonna get so much easier. And you're not even gonna need to think about it, okay? So I think we spent enough time talking about that picture. Of course, I also listed here on the blog post some of those highlights and lowlights that I saw myself looking at my own photo. And I also wanted to show you down here, okay? This is an example. This is why, okay? Now we're getting into, we know what the highlights and lowlights are, right? But we don't know, or you may not know, why do we actually incorporate those into our paintings? Why are we using highlights and lowlights? Why are we trying to create value in the first place, right? Highlights and lowlights and creating value, it's kind of optional. It's optional for you. You don't have to do it, okay? However, in the way I like to paint, like I've said, I like to paint based on photos, based on real life. I like to make my paintings really realistic. And to do that, I'm using values because in real life, I mean, you're looking at this video right now, you can even see like on me, maybe there's like a shadow casted behind me. Things in real life, there's highlights and lowlights everywhere. All right, there's places where the light, either natural light from the sun or light like from light bulbs, that sort of thing. Where the light hits you or other objects, it's gonna leave a highlight, right? And then objects also cast shadows on the other side, the flip side of the coin. Literally, if you're holding a coin up to the light, you would see light on one side, it'd be darker on the other. Or it doesn't even have to be from like where the light or the sun hits objects. That's kind of the most obvious places where we see highlights and lowlights and where they kind of clash and contrast next to each other. But objects themselves can have, just like in that, I'll scroll back up here, remember, in this flower, the petals naturally had these like dark dots on the petals. It had nothing to do with the light, right? It was just naturally like that. That's just the way this flower was literally found in nature, that it just naturally had those areas of darkness, the perceived darkness, remember, on those actual petals. And the same thing can go with highlights, you know? Of course, some of these areas where it's light, the light white streaks on the edges of the petals is from the light hitting it. But there also might be some, like some areas here where there's like darker streaks of pink and some lighter streaks of pink. That might just be how the petals themselves are naturally colored and how they were naturally formed in nature, naturally. So scrolling back down here, I just wanted to show you, this is kind of a before and after of what the world might potentially look like without value, without the highlights and lowlights of real life, right? So if we just bring over to this side, this is just a graphic of a cupcake, right? Just a simple cupcake. We can still tell what it is, but we can tell it's a cartoon cupcake, right? There aren't really that many highlights and lowlights in it. Of course, we've still got the red here in the frosting of the cupcake versus the lighter pink of these hearts. I'm assuming they're sprinkles. Yum. And the cherry on top. But aside from that, it's not really a whole lot of contrasting highlights and lowlights making a lot of different values, right? However, if we bring things over, a little bit of a before and after effect here. Hello, after. This is actually a cupcake painting class that I teach over on my Canvas Academy learning platform. Be sure to check it out. But with this cupcake, we tried to make it a little bit more realistic. It may not be photo quality perfect, but you know, nothing's perfect in the world of art. Where we added some highlights and lowlights here to kind of bring it more into the realm of real life. What a cupcake would look like if we were to take a picture of it, a photo of it in real life. So like you can see down here in the liner, the cupcake liner, we've got this dark kind of reddish tone over here, and it fades kind of like an ombre effect out to light over here. There's a low light, there's a highlight. Same thing we can see here in the cake part. There's like a big spot of a highlight here that's like really bright yellow. And then more towards the edges, there's like a darkish or brown. Also with the frosting up here, we've got this whole pile of frosting. Again, yum, just making me hungry here. But underneath it, we've got this shadow here of like this reddish brown, right? It's casting a shadow. This whole frosting here is casting a shadow on the cake part. Even in the frosting itself, we've got these highlights, these lighter highlights of white streaks that are running through the light blue. And then of course the contrast of the light blue and the dark blue. And then up here to our candle, we've got a little bit of a highlight here in the flame of our candle. This was a birthday cupcake, so of course it had to have a birthday candle on it. So now that we've seen a couple of examples, just some basic examples, and kind of explain what highlights and lowlights are in the realm of value, why we use values, all that good stuff, let's put it into practice and just see a couple more examples of this, you know, seeing what things look like in real life versus what we can do with it in a painting. So here is another painting that I did not too long ago, this time, of a painting. I'm giving you an example of a painting over here that I created based on a real photograph that I took over here. And if you may or may not recognize, this painting is also over here in the background as well. So let's just take a look, kind of comparing. I based this painting on this real photograph. I obviously did kind of crop it a little bit to fit on my canvas here. And of course, it's not like you can't tell the difference which is the painting and which is the photo. But that's also the beauty of making our own paintings and with art, is it's gonna be a little bit messy, and that's what makes it, you guys, this painting is like almost the world view, or at least this photo view, like through my eyes as an artist. So every painting that you create, it's going to be different than whatever your reference photo is and stuff. So don't stress about trying to get it exactly perfect, like, oh my gosh, it's gotta look exactly like this photo. I want it to look absolutely perfect on the wall. Because your art is a little bit messy, but that's what makes it beautiful, right? And your art is like taking your own lens, seeing the world through your own view as an artist. So this would be my view as an artist. Your paintings would be through your own personal view. But motivational artistic speech aside, let's go on ahead and see if we can kind of analyze just a little bit, analyze in quotes, some of the highlights and lowlights we see in the photo and how I translated those over to the painting. So this is something you can kind of see as an example here, and then you can kind of use in your own paintings that you do on your own. So I think the most obvious of the highlights here that I wanted to recreate in my painting is all the lights. There's physical lights here. This is a bridge. This is an actual bridge. Obviously, because I took a photo of it. This is an actual bridge. I'm at a campgrounds I stayed at. And this bridge actually has lights on the railings here that you can see in the photo. It's also got a great perspective, this like perspective photo here. I love that. But anyway, these lights on the railings also, it had rained earlier that day when I took this picture. And the lights are reflecting here in this like puddles of water all the way down. This is the most important part, the most kind of the focal point of this photo that I as an artist saw, and I wanted to recreate that in my painting over here. So that's exactly what I did. I tried my best here to put that highlight here in the tops of the railings where the light is, right? And then shining down on, not just in the petals, but also I might have even added a little bit of an extra highlight here versus in the photo here, right next to the petal. See, it's not wet here, and I know it wasn't wet here in the photo, but I really wanted to add those white and yellow highlights to reflect that light coming off of the lights from the railings. Not just here, but also on this side too. You can see all the way down, because it comes down in the middle here as a low light right next to this puddle here. We can see this low light that kind of goes along the edges of all those puddles. Some other highlights we can kind of see in the sky in both. Like here, it was kind of about dusk at this point when I took the photo. So you can see here, there's kind of some yellowness, some proper term, yellowness right at the tree line. That kind of fades to blue up above. And then over here, I kind of recreated that with that light yellow here. And I kind of made it even lighter here, because I wanted to make this painting, I wanted to show the light really well. So I might have added some extra light here in the sky, some extra yellow kind of above throughout all that blue, just to kind of really brighten it up, right? Now, when we talk low lights, aside from this low light that we saw down the center of the bridge right here, we can also see a lot of low lights in all the trees, right? Because the trees are essentially just shadows at this point in the day, right? At dusk. Because the light is not only shining behind it here in both versions of the image, not only shining behind it here from the sun setting, but also down here. And remember, at least I didn't, as an artist, I didn't want to pull away from all this beautiful light going on here on the actual bridge and on the railings and reflecting in the puddles, and I really wanted to focus on that. So that's why I really did want to keep all these natural lowlights here, the shadows of all the trees. Plus also, hint, it's a little bit easier to paint trees when they're just black. No extra highlights in there to mess around with. And then, of course, aside from that, we have the lowlights here in the top of the bridge, the top portion that's holding the bridge up. That is kind of the same in both images. That is just really dark. There aren't really that many highlights there, except in these bars in the front, which there's no bar on this side in this picture because I cropped it out, and I kind of went a little bit to the side of center, but over here there's a bar, and I did add that little bit of just a tiny bit of a highlight there on that bar just to keep it a little bit visually interesting. So now that's just an example of painting an actual painting from an actual photograph. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this in action in one of the painting classes that I actually teach over on Canvas Academy. So here we've got, I'm going to kind of fast forward through the video a little bit. This is a class that I teach over on Canvas Academy. It's part of the Fruits and More painting course, where we learn how to make a lot of different still life kind of images, of course, of different varying fruits. Which of course they all have a lot of highlights and lowlights naturally in them, especially when it's a still life photograph where the light is intentionally hitting the fruit, the objects, from a certain point of view. So doing still lifes like that with playing around with light in a real setting is actually a really great way to practice these highlights and lowlights. Of course, in the class, I take you step by step through the whole painting, so you don't even have to worry about thinking too much about the highlights and lowlights on your own. But here, we're going to go ahead, and I'm fast forwarding through. I'm mixing up all the colors that we're going to use for this painting. But this is, all right, let's actually back up for a second. This is really important. So right here, we've actually got 3 different versions of red. All right, these are going to be the highlights and the lowlights in the strawberry, because we're making a strawberry and bananas here. So of course we've got the light pink. That's going to be the highlights on the strawberry. The regular red, just straight out of the tube, regular red, is going to be the base color of that strawberry. And then we're also making a darker tone of red that's going to make the lowlights on the strawberry. You see what we did here? Base tone, highlights, lowlights. Simplest way to get your highlights and lowlights of one certain color, just make a little bit of a lighter version, a little bit of a darker version, and you're good to go. And then we also do the same thing here with yellow. I want you to see. Yellow can be very tricky to work with though, however, just a heads up. But of course in this class I take you guys as students through that completely, so you don't have to panic about it, you don't have to worry about it. So as we see here, we've got, just like with the red, we've got our base yellow here. We've got a lighter shade, a lighter tint, rather is the proper term, tint, of yellow, and then a darker shade of yellow right here as well. So then as we go to actually make our picture, the way I did this and the way I taught this class, there's different methods to add your highlights and lowlights, but kind of the easiest way I think for beginners, which is why I taught the class this way, is that you put down your base color first. And then from there, once you've got, you know, your whole object filled in with that base color, here it's the strawberry, so of course we did that base red, right? From there, you can start to add in some highlights with the pink. And then I also added a little bit, see, we got all this highlights with the pink here. And then I also went back in and I added an extra highlight, a little extra highlight with some white there. White is also a great way to get some highlights in there too. And then on the other side of the strawberry, remember, flip side of the coin, we're doing some lowlights, because if the light were hitting the strawberry, remember, it would be hitting it from up here. Hitting it up here with these highlights here. And then on the underside of the strawberry is where you'll get those nice shadows. Now, and then of course we actually do the same thing with the greenery part, little, not really a stem, but a little bit of a leaf on the top of the strawberry. We do the same thing with some regular green. It's a little bit dark, and then we add some white highlights, make a little bit of a lighter green in there. And then of course, just like with those petals on that flower we were talking about, how it had those dark spots naturally, strawberries have the same thing with their seeds, right? With those seeds. And I believe, if I remember correctly, yes, not just the dark dots, but also the light dots, those light yellow dots as well. Just naturally occurs in the strawberry, has nothing to do with how the light is hitting it, just a different type, a different way of getting highlights on there. And now over here with our bananas, same thing, we're starting with the base yellow here. Let me back it up, there we go. Just starting off with the base yellow here, adding some white highlights on the top of the banana. We're doing it one banana at a time. See, we've got that nice light streak there. And then on the underneath side, sort of, at least what we can see of the underneath, because, you know, these other ones are going to be in front of it. We've got a nice darker yellow, darker highlight. And we're going to go through, I believe, yes, and do the same thing with each of the other bananas. One by one. And of course the bottom one, you'll see it the most. We fill it all in with yellow because this is the largest banana. It's the most forward of the three. We put the highlights on top. And then on the underside of it, to kind of make it look more three-dimensional, like it's curved, we put these lowlights down here. And then of course we added a little bit more up here just to kind of get those, you know, kind of like these stems of the banana are a little bit different in value with their highlights and lowlights, so we did that separate. Kind of adding some dark streaks here just to kind of make more contrast, right? Another thing that we could probably mention about values here is it's a lot about contrast, right? That high contrast in certain areas is going to make things look more realistic. Like here we've got the nice light highlight, and right next to it, actually on both sides of it here, the banana behind it, you see that dark, it's a stark contrast from here, this like light line against that dark line behind it, that dark paint that we already did of the banana behind it. So that's how we know that they're separate bananas, right? Because in real life, that's how it would be. It would be that light highlight of this front banana right against that dark low light of the one behind it. Again, making things look more realistic and making things look more three-dimensional. Then of course we finish off the top with just filling in that little top of the stem and adding a little bit of an extra highlight there just for fun, just like that. Oh, and then of course a little bit on the little butt end of this banana here that's sticking out. And just like that, that is how we did that class. So I believe we've talked in depth enough about values today, about highlights and lowlights. I really hope you guys learned something here today. What do you think? What do you think? And like I said, doing highlights and lowlights and creating these values in your paintings it's really important, but I don't want you to hyper focus on it so much that you like hyperventilate, right? Don't panic about it. Just practice, you guys. Just practice with it, and it's gonna kind of become second nature to you in the long run, and you're not even gonna have to think about it. And your artwork is going to look amazing. And of course, if you need more help practicing this technique, well, different techniques with using highlights, lowlights, value, all the things, as always, make sure you check out my Canvas Academy online learning platform where I offer classes just like this strawberry banana class that I just showed you a little bit into. And we make a lot of different other like still lifes of fruit. We also do flowers, all the things. There's over 100 hours of video classes up right now, and it's still, I'm adding more all the time. So of course, you're never gonna run out of things to practice. And like I said, practice, it's what's gonna get you there in terms of being comfortable with these highlights and lowlights and value and stuff. And the more you practice it, the more you're gonna feel comfortable with it, the more you're not even gonna have to think about it anymore. So that's all for this video, and I hope to chat painting tips again with you all very soon. So later, my fellow artists. And look who's back. Yeah, I see you. I see you. No, don't make that Mia.